Come live with me and be my love, and we will own the pleasure's roofs, that valleys, roofs, hills, and fields, woods, or steepy mountain hills.
If all the world and love were young, and truth in every shepherd's tongue, this pretty pleasure might me move to live with thee and be thy love.
And we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious birds sing madrigals.
Time drives the flocks from field to fold, when rivers rage and rocks grow cold, and Philomel becometh dumb, the rest complains of cares to come.
And thou will make thee beds of roses, and 1,000 fragrant poses, a cup of flowers, and a curtain, embroidered all with leaves of myrtle.
The flowers do fade on wanton fields, the wayward winter reckoning yields. A honey tongue, a heart of gall, is fancy's spring, but sorrow's fall.
A gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lamb we pull, fair lined slippers for the coat, with buckles of the purest gold.
Thy gowns, thy shoes, thy bed of roses, thy cup, thy kirtle, and thy poses, soon break, soon wither, soon forgotten, in follies ripe, in reasons rotten.
A belts of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber stud. In these pleasures may thee move. Come live with me and be my love.
Thy belt of straw and ivy buds, the coral clasps and amber stud. All this in me no means can move to come to thee and be thy love.
The shepherd's swain shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If this delight thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love.
But could youth last and love still breed, had joys no date, nor age no need, then this delight my mind might move to live with thee and be thy love.
Christopher Marlowe's poem, The Passionate Shepherd to His Love, is the ideal scenario for a couple living in a countryside. Throughout the poem, the shepherd tries to persuade his beloved to come and live with him, through presenting her the beauty of the idyllic world in which he is living. He paints a perfect pictures to his beloved, promising her the comfort and the pleasures she'll going to experience if she would just accept his invitation. However, beyond deeper interpretation and understanding of Christopher Marlowe's reputation, one can decipher if the shepherd is trustworthy. Being a sly poet, Christopher Marlowe's reputation didn't have a good reputation during Elizabethan era. Therefore, we can assume that the shepherd deceived his love. With a witty use of setting, visual imagery, figurative language, and symbolism, the poetic devices in Marlowe's poem help to exaggerate and embellish the shepherd's impractical proposal to his beloved.
The nymph's reply to the shepherd by Sir Walter Raleigh is a poetic response to the passionate shepherd to his love by Christopher Marlowe. A nymph is the speaker of the poem who replies realistically to the optimistic shepherd of Marlowe's poem. The shepherd believes in the present pleasure, but the nymphs believe in the reality of life and retorts the shepherd for his ideal life.
In the appealing beginning of the first stanza, the shepherd tries to persuade his beloved to come into his arm and dwell with him forever in an idyllic countryside. He promised her all the pleasure by describing the majestic scenery of the valleys, groves, hills, fields, woods, or steeping mountain. He believes that the nature will yield all the pleasure that he had promised to his beloved. The shepherd tries to lure and entice the woman he loves by the natural setting. He implies that living in the countryside will be a leisurely living. Instead of working, they will watch the other shepherd working and feeding their flocks while the birds sing in harmony with the water. This quiet and tranquil scene with a peaceful view and pleasant auditory are absolutely attractive to a beloved. Flower imagery in the third stanza gives the idea that the shepherd approached his beloved with a romantic and beauties made out of nature. The bed of roses, the bouquet of various flowers, the hat made of flowers, and the dress covered with the leaves of myrtle. In the fourth stanza, the shepherd continues to convince his beloved through offering her the precious material gifts. He promised to clothe her with a gown made of the finest wool. Rather than simply shearing the sheep, which is the common procedure, the shepherd would gently pull the wool from the pretty lamb in a more graceful and romantic way. The slipper he will make to his beloved for the pole will be a fair line with a gold buckle. However, this is somehow unrealistic because in Marlowe's era, the shepherd were not a gold carrier and there was no gold to be found in the countryside. So the shepherd poses an impractical proposal that a normal shepherd cannot provide. By the fifth stanza, the shepherd promised to adorn her beloved with the belts of straw and ivy buds, with coral cloths and amber studs. He promised to clothe her from head to foot like a queen. He restates the first line of the poem with the hope to invite his beloved to come and live with him and be his love. Prior mention from the previous interpretations, this is also somehow unrealistic because amber was so expensive. So absolutely the shepherd cannot afford to buy an amber during this era. Finally, in the last stanza, the shepherd claimed that there will be dancing and singing each morning of the May for his love's delight. So, May is referred to spring season, and the shepherd's enticing portrayal of the season give his beloved all the reason to pack up and move with him as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the shepherd cannot be trusted because he doesn't mention the other 3 seasons. He only mentioned the idyllic setting of the countryside during springtime. He tries to persuade and deceive his beloved with a exaggerated indefinite setting of the springtime.
The first verse of the nymph's reply suggests that if the honesty of men was undoubted as in from the line, and truth in every shepherd's tongue, if love and youth were eternal, as in from the line, if all the world and love were young, and if idealistic of Marlowe's scenery were true, then the nymph would go to the arms of the shepherd and live with him. But most importantly, Raleigh had emphasized the verses by using the second conditional type in the first stanza to allude the unrealistic of Shepherd's iconic images. Apparently, this partly rejects the idea of the everlasting youth that the shepherd had offered. Once again, Raleigh had brilliantly used natural law to reverse the pleasant in Shepherd's picture and time. Surprisingly, what he had brilliant used were actually the reverse version of Marlowe's subject, but darker and altered. And for the second stanza, there is a line stated that the time drives the flocks from field to fold, and according to the nymphs, it will turn a pleasant river into a first one, and the rocks will soon be frozen by the winter harsh, and more importantly, man become cold as time flies. And in the third stanza, the nymph verses her images into negative ones with the fact that nothing can escape from the eternal loop of time, and the obvious fact of the flower deterioration, as in from the line, the flower do fade and wanton fields, followed by the line, in folly ripe, in reason rotten. This metaphor suggests that in the irrational state of mind when in love seem to be endless, but time itself brings sense and irrationality to a person, and perhaps inevitably disappointment. And in a line, a honey tongue, a heart of gall, it fancies spring but sorrows fall. This somehow speaks out the suspicious of every woman, whether the man in love and the one after the same, or just like words from the mouth of a drunkard. And in the fourth stanza, the nymph's response had pointed out the impractical of the shepherd's promises by the time things must have been forgotten and withered.